Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and today my friends are back with a showdown here between the Tomb Kings and Ogre Kingdoms. It's going to be myself with Ark in the Black coming in with the Necrosphinx as well as the Necrotect facing off against Subutai, who's going to be using the Firebelly Lord, which is certainly a good choice. The Firebelly, of course, with the Burning Head, extremely efficient at clearing out Tomb Guard and Skeletons, Nehekar Warriors, the works. Now, as far as the build goes, we're going to have a ton of pointy sticks, obviously facing off against Ogre Kingdoms. You're going to want anti-large. And these guys are pretty cost-effective. They have 30 melee defense, anti-large bonus, I think of close to 15. Yeah, it's going to be 14, so pretty respectable. Yeah, they'll still get melted pretty quickly by magic, and oftentimes Ogre players will attack them with Gnoblars and then have the dual-weapon Bulls stand on top of the Gnoblars to really get that value and wear them down, but I still think it's a good choice. So spears in the front, couple Tomb Guard halberds in the back line. We do have Ark in the Black on foot. You know, I find that when I bring mounted characters against the Ogre Kingdom, so at least, you know, a character like Arkin, for example, like they can kind of get pinned in place and beaten down a little bit easier, whereas on foot, they seem a little bit more survivable and can oftentimes weasel their way out of surrounds. So I do like to bring him on foot here. He does have just Spirit Leech. Spirit Leech is pretty good against Ogre Kingdoms. They have some decent single entities and low model count units that are very powerful, like Mournfangs, Firebellies, all their different characters, whatever, right? Sky Strider's another big example. So Spirit Leech is generally pretty cost effective, but yeah, Arkin's pretty good on foot too. On foot, he's easier to leave in a fight with his 50 melee defense, which is actually very respectable. He's a good combatant, really. So you leave him in combat, and over the course of a long grind against ogres who like to just swarm with bodies and ogre bulls for days, you're going to be able to get your Tomb Blade of Arkin off almost 5 times. Now, this is kind of an old school throwback to Warhammer 2, and that's kind of been my kick lately. I'm trying things that used to be really good in land battles, or at least, you know, somewhat synergistic, and trying to bring them back into the light here in domination mode. So we do have a Necrotect, and he's got the Elixir of Might, which gives a huge damage buff to a unit. So you can cast this on like a big scary Sphinx, right? His weapon strength is going to go up to like 700-800 plus, and you could goon an ogre character. Just giving it a try. I don't know if it's worth it, but it seems pretty cool. We do have Restore. So Restore is a pretty fat heal. It's basically like casting a regrowth. So he has 2 charges, and I do have a second Necrotect coming out of reserve. And also, as far as their utility goes in the front line, these bad boys can fight against, like, you know, Gnoblars and chaff units and, you know, clear through those type of things with some efficiency. So that's going to be the mainline army with the Sphinx of Usaf here in the forest. And this thing is super rad. He does have fire resist, which I suppose is pertinent against the Firebelly, but also anti-large armor piercing. I mean, in theory, this thing's super good against Ogre Bulls, right? Like, Ogre Bulls lack armor piercing, and they themselves, like, I just think this thing has a nice niche in this matchup. A little bit vulnerable to bringing the, you know, against being shot by lead belchers, maybe an Iron Blaster at close range, but the thing is, most Ogre players just have such a hard-on for swarming with Ogre Bulls and, you know, Sky Striders and Mournfang Cab that they don't really bring that type of stuff against Tomb Kings in my experience. Maybe it's because they're worried about Ushapti Grapos ranging them, but yeah, I feel like this guy might be okay. More Tomb Guard halberds on the far side, and that is it. For the Ogre Kingdoms to Subutai, it's going to be a Dread Legion of Gnoblar Trappers and basic Gnoblars, and a huge Ogre Bull wave in the trees. Ogre Bulls with dual weapons. We got Ogre Bulls, Bulls on parade, certainly making Rage Against the Machine proud. Firebelly going to be in the bushes. He's got his big stick, and yeah, he's a great choice. He's got Burning Head, and Burning Head is very, very good against Tomb King's Lore Fires in general. You could use Burning Head or Flamestorm. I probably think Burning Head's better. Flamestorm's good, but yeah, I think in this situation, just clearing out chaff, the Burning Head's going to be a little bit more cost-effective and more Gnoblars, and that's pretty much it. So we'll do some fast-forwarding while the 2 armies gather on the fronts and prepare to do battle. Storm clouds gather, my friends. As the spears line up, we do get the Necrotect and the Horsemen moving in. So Nehekar Horsemen are another very, very good tool in this matchup. They're excellent at clearing out Gnoblars, and they certainly can fight Ogre Bull units effectively with their really good combat stats of 34 and 40 with 1 Chevron on them, which is really, really not bad. I do a little bit of a split push on the other side. We do have a couple units of Skeleton Warriors and Nehekar Horsemen moving up. I don't know if this is a good idea since the Ogres can bounce back and forth, but I figured, hey, let's go for like the inexorable push of the dead. Just get this big wave of units moving up and see if we can just wrestle all 3 objectives and maybe get a triple cap rather than trying to, you know, just hard value trade. We'll see how it goes. So Sphinx is here. Ogres have gotten Iron Guts in and Mournfang Cavalry, so he does have the anti-large cav and the Iron Guts, so the elite of the tribes have come out. And, you know, if these guys can get my big Sphinx in open field and get a good duel with it, they're certainly going to do quite well, but I need to make sure that I'm staying buffered with other units, and if I do get caught in a bad situation, to apply those heals. So you can see the Ogres do ignore, I believe, half of the charge bonus. These are basic Ogre Bulls, but Ark in the Black going to be dropping a Skeleton Summon on them to try and mess them up a little bit. And the Skeleton Spears with Arkin should fight relatively effectively, I would say, but there's going to be a big flank coming in, so that is a nice flank there by Subutai. Those are dual weapon bulls, so they're going to trade super cost effectively into my poor Skeleton Spears, but, you know, Arkin is a nice anchor for this position, and Tomb Guard Halberds will be moving in to help. But this is what you're here for, baby. The big Sphinx getting fat heals and using his anti-large attacks. I do send in some Horsemen and basic Spearmen to try and support a little bit. Spirit Leech also going down on the Ogre Cavalry, which is pretty cost effective. Muna probably wouldn't be quite as good. I do think Spirit Leech is a little bit more ubiquitously useful against Ogres because it can snipe their characters when they eventually come out, like the Slaughtermasters and you know, if you ever saw Greasus, I suppose it could be useful there too. Now, Mournfang Cav get smashed pretty hard by the Sphinx there. We did use the Elixir of Might, which gave him 640 weapon strength, pretty solid, and he was able to really punch through those Mournfang Cavalry. On top of that, you do see him doing good damage against the Iron Guts with Skeleton Spearmen supporting, and the Necrotect is now going to be moving up to provide his attacks, which isn't bad. 360 weapon strength, I mean, it's not insignificant. Over on the side, fighting's going pretty well. We do have the Tomb Guard Halberds battling against the Ogre Bulls. And the Tomb Guard Halberds are pretty elite. They have 40 plus melee defense, so they should hold well even being swarmed like this. You can see the Realm of Souls going down, so a lot of my units getting healed by the army ability, as I do lose more and more models here. I don't have the Lore of Nehakara spam, which is one of the main ways to get like army-wide healing, but I honestly am a big Arcan enjoyer. I think he's a great character. So starting to wear down the Fire Belly, I do decide to use a Spirit Leech on him, whereas on the other side, things go a little bit south. We do see the Ogre Bulls with dual weapons able to get those fat karate chops in, and isolated skeletons without spears are just going to get plowed by bull units. So over here, Subutai certainly got the better of the trade, as many of my units were worn down and isolated, Noblars and Bulls. Yeah, trading very well. So I do pull back my skeletons that I was going to be moving in. I figure, hey, let's kind of pull them back, save them for later, and see what we can do. Now, Ogres do have the two objectives right now. Looking at value trading, though, we're pretty even. And I do have a lot of healing. With the double Necrotects coming in, you can see Restores going down. I believe I did already use one up on the Sphinx. And the Mournfang Cavalry did move back in. Massacre active, which is pretty big. It gives them quite a bit of a damage buff here. Not that the terror matters at all against the undead. But the Sphinx still being a raid boss, man. I'm very happy with it so far. And also something in the late game, Ogres are not immune to psychology. So I think they might have a couple of units that are, but generally speaking, they can be terror routed off. So knowing I need to win this objective, I kind of felt as if the side play where I was like going over here and doing the Mortal Kombat didn't work out too well. So I'm like, okay. Now we're going to go back to the consolidated lane push strategy where we just like push the middle here and try and control both my objective and his home objective, just with this really durable, like hard to remove blob of units. So pulling back the Sphinx, popping a Restore, which like I said is a regrowth. Percentage-based healing, obviously super cost-effective here on the big Sphinx, as he is going to be pulling back to some Tomb Guard Halberds, getting some Skeleton Horsemen in as well, but opting to pull them back at the last second. And there's the Terror Route right there, right? So you see a Terror Route going down to the Cavalry, and if they actually get broken, which they do then get broken, I can simply use my crappy Skeleton Horsemen to chase them down, which is like turbo cost-effective. So we do summon in the Eyes of the Desert, and the Fire Belly didn't see him coming, so I ended up overcasting a Spirit Leech, sniping the Fire Belly in tandem with the Eyes of the Desert. So it was a really, really kind of nice little sniping combo here. And these guys are also very good against Ogre Kingdoms. And man, Tomb Kings are just such a cool army. I think like of all the undead factions, I mean, Vampire Coast probably won't be in the Old World tabletop, but obviously Tomb Kings will be. So I think I would definitely be willing and interested in starting a Tomb Kings army. They're just so rad. And so a lot of their models are like super outdated and terrible, but if you guys have seen the Necrosphinx model from tabletop, dude, that thing is sweet. It is so cool. So we're up in value now, and with healing being taken into account, that is pretty big for us. Eyes of the Desert going to be moving and a grooving. Skeleton Horsemen chasing down whatever they can. And the side objective obviously completely taken by the Ogre. So the Chunguses will probably make their way back across, as my one Skeleton Warrior here is pretty much massacred by those Ogre units. But like I said, we're going to be consolidating our efforts, slowly moving more Tomb Guard Halberds up. They're going to take their sweet time, but we have plenty of time. We had the objectives for a moment in the beginning. So that gave us a little bit of a buffering with which to work. So Necrotect's fighting, I believe both of them are here now. Yeah, so we have two of these bad boys. And again, not bad combatants. You know, Ogre, Bull units, Man-Eaters, whatever, they don't have the most weapon strength. So, you know, or not, excuse me, armor. They have very good weapon strength, but the most armor. So the Necrotects can actually hit them pretty well with the whips, even though they're bonus versus infantry characters. So the big Sphinx still fighting. Libra Mortis going down from Arc in the Black, which is going to be giving a big physical resist buff. So these are Man-Eaters with the Iron Fist, kind of a cool tech. You usually see the Great Open variant, but obviously Tomb Kings, one of the things you would see would be, you know, Skeleton Archers shooting down Ogre units. Occasionally Ushopti Great Bows, but not that Ushopti Great Bows would be mitigated by shields, but Eyes of the Desert going to be creeping up, trying to get him in my Death Star here. I have a very, very scary undead blob, but the Eyes of the Desert are halberd units at their core, so they will be able to massacre these basic ogres. Still a little bit vulnerable. They can be swarmed by Ogre Bull units. I've had experiences where I'm like, oh, it's an anti-large armored halberd unit. These Ogre Bulls surely won't kill it. And then two of them like swarm, and it's like, oh, this is actually going kind of bad. But here, Eyes of the Desert holding on. What's cool about these guys is they are constructs, so the Necrotects can actually synergize with them. Good burning head from my opponent going right down the line, kind of cooking through a bunch of my halberds here while the giant Sphinx of Hemry continues fighting, and we are starting to make some ground on the objective here. Now, the idea is that he's eventually going to be pulling all his momentum over here, like the units on the far side, right? So that's when if you're playing like a lane push strategy in domination mode, let's say you're like, okay, I'm not going to play the side objective, I'm going to allocate everything. Well, eventually if your opponent splits their forces, they're going to have to then you know, bring those reinforcements over to be able to kind of hold against you. I mean, not always, but if it's an even fight, yes. And then that's the opportunity for you to get some quick cavalry and start to press the back. And now that this side is undefended, we do get some Skeleton Spears, some Nehakara Horsemen, which we're going to be preparing an ambush, and we're going to be trying to grab that sweet, sweet side point if we can. Tomb Guard Halberds poking against the Ogre Bulls, and we do have the Eyes of the Desert with their old pointy sticks. And they're doing pretty well, especially with the healing. Restores, I believe I cast 1 restore on them, which kind of kept them in business. Those little Noblar Ninja Stars, though, do a deceiving amount of damage. I mean, look at that. They're poking those guys down, man. It's no joke. Tombguard Halberds holding on like champs. Ark in the Black still doing great, just kind of fighting in the blob and, you know, dropping skeleton summons whenever he can. We're not quite able to flip this objective, and my opponent has passed me in score. Really nice Burning Head from Subutai right there. Burning Head does go down on the Tombguard Halberds as they get swarmed by the old Iron Guts with their bonus force infantry and the Ogre Bulls. So this is going to be quite a beatdown for these guys. But even still, the Tombguard Halberds should be able to kind of hold their own in this fight, and that's why they're great. They have almost 50 melee defense, not bad at all. So the Firebelly did come back, decided to grab some Skeleton Horsemen and chase him down, and you know, Skeleton Horsemen always good. I would say if you're playing Tomb Kings, guys, you always want to bring at least like 2 Skeleton Horsemen, maybe like 2 or 3 Nekar Horsemen. They're just such good, cost-effective like cavalry units. So Spirit Leech going to be going down to the Firebelly's leadership should surely break now that he's being attacked by all these Skeleton Horsemen. And this objective, man, it's not going quietly. The Ogres are able to get pretty resurgent by using the Iron Guts and the Man-Eaters. They're certainly taking no prisoners. Restore going down once again on the Eyes of the Desert, but the Big Sphinx is certainly a problem. Like, lots of Terror Routes going to be going down, and he himself is pretty healthy. I would wager, yeah, about 1,300 value so far, so he hasn't paid for himself, but I mean, he's still almost full health, and is really going to be a tough thing to remove. Very, very tough. Some more Ogre Bulls coming in and more Bulls unprayed on the far side. Over here, we're going to start pressing this objective as we do get some Nekar Horsemen moving into the old Noblar Trappers here. So the Noblar Trappers should get wrecked pretty badly, I would imagine. Not a crazy charge bonus or anything, but now we see the Ogre Bull dual weapons moving in. Spear is able to push back the first wave, and my 3 units here should be able to defeat 1 Ogre Bull unit. And this objective most likely will be flipping. And I don't think those reinforcements are going to be able to salvage it, as these Ogres are going to break, and then it'll simply be a 3v1 versus those guys. So the side objective is looking pretty good for us, while also putting pressure here. We do see the value sitting at 9.9 to 7.8 here as the Haggard blob fight continues. It's bringing me back to the olden days. I remember the old land battle days when we would have the undead blobs of doom with stacking effects and mortis engines, all sorts of good stuff. It certainly brings back the memories here. As we do see the old skeleton spears making their way up. Should be a pretty nice little supporting piece. Ark of the Black taking a bit of damage. Ogres, even their basic chaff units, which lack armor piercing, do typically hit pretty hard. Spirit Leech going down on the good quality units. The Iron Guts, as the Big Sphinx is a little bit surrounded here. Looks like he could be taking some considerable damage. I believe he's got some Man-Eaters in there. You know, during the game I was wondering, I was like, what the hell is doing damage against my big beastie here? But I think it was the combination of Iron Guts who have good armor piercing and the Man-Eaters that were mixed in. You can see the Sphinx actually getting worn down a little bit. So that kind of sucked, and I was really hoping to get a break on the position, but all it takes is a couple Ogre units here to break and route, and then there's going to probably be a mass chain route because of the terror and obviously all the fear that my units do cause being spooky undead. Now, side objective pretty firmly in our control. We do see another Ogre Bull arrive, with Ogre Bull, Nekar Horseman Spears, and Carrion will probably be able to drag them down. So the side objective is basically just, you know, units being fed to me here. We do have some more units coming out, but I think I should be able to hold this for enough time. We do have another Skeleton Warrior coming out, and the dreaded Ogre Bull Reaganomics as they move in and trickle down, and they do get poked as they arrive. Now, up here on this objective, though, they've been holding on to this one pretty valiantly, but Ark of the Black's Curse does go down. Does a little bit of damage. Spirit Leech once again, just dropping it on whatever I could click. I should have done the Iron Guts there, but they were broken, and now the Terror Route's coming into play, right? You start to see a lot of these units breaking and just having Terror Routes, and these Iron Guts are Terror Routed, and that's going to be giving me a lot of momentum on this fight, as we do see the Ogres kind of stopping to send reinforcements here. It looks like most of the reinforcements are going over to objective number 3, which I could lose, but it's going to take some time for them to kind of wrestle that objective. We have more Skeleton Spears here, a couple Horsemen coming in from reserve, and I always like, maybe I should have pulled these guys up sooner, right? Like, I feel like I could have gotten this objective, so that was perhaps a misplay. But even still, I'm always worried about like Ogres sneaking around with their 54-speed units and grabbing objectives, so I just wanted to kind of secure things as I got them. But in retrospect, that was probably a mistake, right? Because Tomb Kings can react pretty quickly with like Vanguard Horsemen, Sepulchral Stalkers, and probably push them off or at least contest it. So I think in retrospect, probably should have kept pushing on a map like this. If it were like a side-by-side objective like Itza, yeah, you would want to leave something because they can bounce there easier, but they kind of have to get past me here to get the point, right? So the Big Sphinx grinding up here. We do see the objectives almost, yeah, over here it's looking pretty good. The basic Skeletons obviously losing to the dual bulls. The dual weapon bulls really, really good at clearing out lightning armor chaff. One of the best in the game for sure for their price point. And the Horsemen and Spears, though, much, much better trade as they wear those guys down. And I can't remember if I brought any reinforcements in. I think I was a little bit focused on playing these 2 points because I figured, okay, my units will hold there. Let's send some Vanguard Horsemen over. So we have Skeleton Horsemen and Basic Horsemen, which will probably be able to sweep up this position. And then we can use our big scary monster to try and hold this point. So another little pit fight here. We do have the Firebelly, who does do fire damage, and remember, my Sphinx does have fire resist. The MLG plays there from the Big Sphinx, as the Firebelly duels him and swings his giant stick. But with Spirit Leech coming down, as well as the anti-large attacks, and the massive, massive weapon strength and combat stats, we should be able to smash this Firebelly, or at least kind of make him think twice about this foul business that's going on. So Arkin's going to be moving up, a little bit light on support though, so as you can see, I eventually had that same realization during the game. to move up the Skeleton Spears to support my monsters. Looks like there's going to be a Burning Head going down here. I don't really have anything for the Burning Head to hit, I suppose. Oh, no, there are some Skeleton Spearmen here, so that was a good one. Definitely leads them to crumbling, and Tomb King's definitely in a much better place now. I feel like Tomb Kings, like Ogres, for example, are, I think, one of the top-rated factions right now, and in my experience of playing this in this matchup, like, Tomb Kings are pretty good against Ogres. Like, I would say it's an even-ish matchup, but even still, like, they put up a great fight. I think Tomb Kings are in a really good spot. I think a lot of the really sweaty players kind of abandoned them after they got nerfed, but overall, I still think Tomb Kings have a ton of potential and a ton of matchups, and even though their win rate's not great right now, I think it's just because a lot of people who used to play them stopped playing them because they're kind of more chasing the more meta factions, which is understandable in a competitive situation, right? But I do feel as if Tomb Kings are still a very high potential faction. Firebelly here, getting attacked, Spirit Leech, and he is broken. The Sphinx is finally going to go down, but it does get about 2200 value, which isn't bad at all, and it also absorbed a ton of my opponent's damage, which I think was very cost-effective. Over here, we do see pretty much a mass rout. Nehekar Horsemen are just some of the best light cav in the game. I mean, the fact that they're unbreakable, they have 50 armor, which is actually not bad, 35 melee defense, almost 40 weapon strength. Dude, they're so good. So we're going to break these Ogre Bulls off the point, and it's going to be really hard for the Chungus Kingdoms to get this one back, because Ark in the Black just has actually used 4 of his Tomb Blades this game. So we got 4 summons off, which is crazy good value. You know, that's going to be, yeah, what, like 1,200 gold in resources that you're getting onto the field from Ark, and that is great. Granted, yeah, he has to be kind of in danger in combat, but if you're playing that like spear wall and he's on foot, he's going to be much harder to bring down. So getting a couple carrion out of reserves. I always like to float a couple carrion around, like have one, so when something important breaks, you can chase it off. So going to be trying to chase that Firebelly off the battlefield here, as we do see the Man-Eaters and company starting to break, and the Ogres are pretty much in a mass rout, as on this side it's looking a little bit grim for them as well. So that's pretty much going to be GG, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. It's certainly a fun game. Kind of a cool showcase. I know like the undead kind of blob style of using like monsters and blobs isn't always the most dynamic in terms of spectating, but I think it's kind of cool to see unused units. Like, I can't remember the last time I saw a Tomb Kings player use one of these big monsters, and I honestly felt it's pretty effective, and Subutai is a top tier player as well, so if it can work against him, then it's got some teeth, right? So we got, yeah, the Spirit Leech Archon was great. Tomb Guard Halberds, they did okay. Burning Heads are obviously very punishing. Eyes of the Desert, super solid. I probably should have summoned the other one, but I love the healing. Horsemen are always solid, and it was quite a bit of fun. But yeah, I think like an Ogre army like this could, like bringing one, like a Lead Belcher just as like a security measure against like a big monster, I think could go a long way. Just like little things like that. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. GG, well played. It looks like it was mostly, yeah, the Iron Guts and the Man-Eaters who were able to do some damage to the big man. But yeah, that's it for today. Let me know what else you guys want to see. If there's any factions you guys feel have been a little bit neglected here on the channel, send them my way. We'll give them some love. GG's. See you guys.